From ride and show attendant at a theme park called Universal Studios, working at rides like Back to the Future. How about Fievel's Playland? Our guest today went from ride and show attendant to vice president, executive of human resources for an international media company called Telemundo. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome my friend, Javier Ortiz. Javier, how are you doing?
Chuck, how are you? I'm doing well, thank you. Yes.
I am fantastic. And that's obviously not any type of joke. You were a frontline ride and show attendant going to college.
Yep.
And you worked your way up, and I'm going to ask you to talk about that story in just a minute, because I think it's absolutely fantastic. It is absolutely inspiring for many people in many different genres. But before we do that, did you bring anything for us today? We're all about the cups and the mugs.
I brought my mug, Telemundo. It's the old school logo. This logo has changed a couple times, but it's one that I like to travel with. This is a sticker of thanks. It's a program we have in the company where it's a 360 thank you program that we started about 2 years ago. And 360 because this is not the typical manager to employee program. This is at all levels where you can send digitally virtual thank you notes to your manager, to your coworker, if you're a manager, to your employee. Those thank you notes obviously equate to points, and you can then eventually get enough points to either transfer them to gift cards or donate them to different organizations. So I like that program. It's very successful. And then Unidos is one of our programs that we have. This is for the Latinos, employees across NBC Universal. So I like to promote that program as well. So this is my day-to-day come to work coffee mug.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
But I didn't bring the mug to do this because I want to do something different. Look at this.
Oh, I love that.
Can you look? Original one, very first one, all the way to my last one before I left. So
that's cool.
People that have the first name with the last name initial. They wouldn't, back then, they were like, no, we can't do that. But there was too many Javiers to have to be unique. So
that's awesome. I have so many of those things sitting in envelopes and bags and baggies. Yep. I love that. What year would that pink Universal Studios name tag be?
That was April 1990.
April 1990.
It's right before we officially opened.
30 years ago. So 30 years ago.
Well, I didn't do that math, but yes. I'm still young.
Wow. I mean, I can't believe we were working together 30 years ago. I think at that time I was in HR. I was in recruiting. I wasn't in field operations yet. I
started in Amity Village at a little restaurant there. I forget the name now, but that was my first job, 90 days. And then I went to ride and show. Right after that, I did a transfer.
Sure. That was Amity, folks. That was where the Jaws attraction was back in the old days. And I believe that if there were two restaurants. One was you'd walk up to a window, and the other
Boardwalk Snacks.
What was it?
Boardwalk Snacks.
Boardwalk Snacks. Yep.
I just remember. Yep.
So Javier, for our group, and I love, by the way, thank you for sharing that THX, that thanks program. That's kind of cool. If we have time, I'd like to come back to that. But tell us about your journey. And I know you're going to talk to us. You have some notes about the items that have attributed to your success. You've got some talking points, but just generally tell us a little bit about your journey, where you were and up to where you are today, your different stops along the way.
So I was born in Puerto Rico, moved to Venezuela back in the late 80s, mid 80s. My dad's job moved us there. I went to an American school there. And that basically meant that when I was done as a senior, I had to go back to the US because I couldn't go to college in Venezuela. And so I started looking, I ended up in Orlando. I started in Valencia, eventually went to UCF. When I started school, I thought I was going to be a computer science engineer. My dad was engineer, so I was kind of following that. But very quickly, I found out that I didn't like, you know, those classes, that curriculum, right? So I didn't know what to do. I didn't really know exactly which direction to go. I went back to the counselor at the school, and she asked me to take a test, which was like a 3-hour test, hundreds of questions, and eventually to tell me that I should be working with people. And then it gives you a list of many different jobs that follow under that category. And I was working at McDonald's at that time, my very first job in college. And I enjoyed training new employees. You know, back then, if you remember, you trained, your first day of work was a videotape, 2-hour videotape, and that was your training. Yeah. And I thought that didn't really help me. So I took it upon myself to talk to my manager there and kind of say, hey, I'd like to be the trainer. And I didn't know what that was. I was just enjoying training others when they started their jobs. And in the list of the different jobs after I took that test, training and development was one of those jobs. And it was under the category of human resources. And I asked about that job, and she kind of, gave me some guidance on what HR, human resources, was. And I said, well, I really like doing that at my job today. And I even went back to my manager at the restaurant. I said, I want to be your trainer. And she didn't know what that meant, but I said 25% an hour. But that obviously led to me then officially kind of changing my goal in college as to what I wanted to, my degree and finishing there. So I ended up with, I graduated from UCF with a BSBA, Resources Management. I did a hospitality minor because Orlando, and I figured I would live in Orlando for the rest of my life. That was my career, school, college degree. I started at Universal, as you said, back in 1990. Why? Because I loved Steven Spielberg movies, and there was a big, on Kirkman Drive, there was a big billboard for E.T., and I said, I'm going to work at E.T. I went to a job fair at Valencia for Universal right before they opened, a couple months before. The only job officially that they had was food and beverage or restaurants, which I didn't want to do, but I said, okay, fine, I'll take it, and then I'll transfer, which I did. I remember my first manager there, Homer Dinkins, went to get him the form for him to sign, and he was a little upset that I was leaving. But so eventually, continued doing different jobs in Variety Show, met you in 5-0, Animal, forget the name, Animal Actors.
Yes.
Back to the Future, and then through your help, I ended up meeting folks in the HR department, which I became the first internal, let's call it internal intern at Universal. I was doing human resources internship for the high season in HR, which was the low season in the park, right? But then I would go back to the attraction for the high season, spring break, summer, holiday season. And I did that for about a year and a half until I graduated, and then officially got my first professional job, which was I became the first on-the-job trainer for food and beverage back then with the food and beverage department. So I would do like first day, second day orientation, alcohol service, all the legal training, all that stuff, which eventually led to me wanting to learn more about HR and became an HR rep, HR manager. And then in early 2007, had an opportunity to transfer because by then it was NBC Universal. The Parks was part of the big NBC group under GE.
Mm-hmm.
And called me. They actually called me. I didn't apply for the job. They actually found my name through a process I used to be called EMS, which is literally the performance review process for GE back then. And I had put down that I wanted to be at Telemundo or NBC stations because I known Telemundo since I was a child back home in Puerto Rico. And I figured that was a great part of the business. So, and they called me and say, hey, we're looking for an HR manager in Texas for 2 stations. We saw your name, and that led to a number of interviews. I flew to Texas, applied, got the job, and January 2007, I was moving from Orlando to Houston, Texas. And eventually, 3 years later, I'm in Miami. I got transferred, promoted. I was relocated to Miami, South Florida, and then I've been here ever since. Different jobs, but still with the company. So literally 30 years with the company if you add the 2. So that's a little bit of my career per se. Today I oversee, in this role I've been in since 2014, I oversee the human resources division for 30 stations, markets across the US and Puerto Rico, and then we have a news bureau in Mexico. So that's my role with the company for Telemundo stations under the NBC Stations Group. Yeah.
Wow. I love that story. And I wrote down some notes that I just want to kind of go over that I pulled out of that. So the first thing is McDonald's.
Yes.
And a lot of people do. They, what's the word? They kind of maybe poo-poo, shall we say, on, and I mean by that in the way that they don't talk highly of getting your first job or a job at McDonald's. But that served you well, did it not?
It did. I initially I went because I wanted a job. I wanted part-time money for, weekend movies or whatever, buying new tennis shoes or whatever it was. But what it led to, and I always go back to this, which is I had a manager that really cared about not only me, but the employees. And, she helped me understand the manager-employee relationship in the sense of learning, right? So I always go back to that because she was my first manager, and, she'd actually transferred from one McDonald's to another one, which is the one on Kirkman Road by Universal. And I eventually transferred to that restaurant because of her. And she offered me, I think it was 25 cents more. So I said, hey, 25 cents, I'll go. But I think the learning was, at least for me, I was given the opportunity to help in the sense of, I didn't have an official title. I just made it myself, but I was able to learn how to train other people on their jobs, whether it was, front desk or front counter, or, drive through or the kitchen. And I enjoy that part of the job. And I always go back to that manager that helped me understand that even though I didn't have a title, even though I wasn't making a lot of money, she was giving me an opportunity to do something I enjoyed.
That's awesome. And then you go to Universal Studios. A lot of people think Universal Studios, I'm going to work on the rides. All of a sudden you're put in food and beverage.
Yes.
But once again, you made the best of that. Did you not?
Yes. I was very clear from that day at Valencia when I applied for the job, and I said, look, I'll take the job because I want to work at Universal. But eventually I want to work in ride and show. That's my goal. That's what I want to do. I really enjoy, it was all based around E.T. and Back to the Future and these big movies for me. And I wanted to have some kind of, to be able to say at some point, I worked there, right? Like I worked at that E.T. attraction. Never thought I would meet Steven Spielberg, which I did in a number of occasions. But my goal was to work in that attraction. And I made it a point. I tell you, my 89th day on the job, and that was the rule, right? You wait 90 days and then you can transfer. My 89th day, I saw on that open jobs that we did, internal posting jobs, I saw write and show ET, and I got the form and I went to Homer Dinkins, and I said, I need you to sign this. I'm transferring. He goes, what do you mean? I said, remember I told you I'm leaving. I'm going to write and show. And I did. I was able to do that, and that was obviously at that time was great for me because that's really what I wanted to do. So
right. And great careers have been made in food and beverage. People have started in food and beverage.
Yeah.
But the point I wanted to get at is you didn't start right away in a management job. You're the VP of HR for an international media company, Telemundo, but you started flipping burgers, dropping fries, mopping floors, and you worked your way up because you thought there has to be more, number one. But number two, you took the best pieces of what you were doing and you just put them as part of you, and you just moved up to that next level. That's what I see at the beginning of your origin story, correct?
Yes. Yeah, look, I remember many conversations with you. You got, I was given the lead title. Lead was like the next promotion opportunity. I still like the training aspect of me being able to train other people. So I kind of kept that training aspect within my role, but lead became like the next job I want to do because I want to be able to learn more and have some responsibility and, add more to my skills. And, you keep looking for the next step, whatever that next step is. At that time for me was to be a lead. And, I was still in college. I was still, I'm proud of the fact that I'm one of those that worked full time and went to school full time, right? I did that for a number of years, but I didn't want to give anything up in that sense. I wanted to continue to learn and grow, and always kept looking. It was like, okay, what's the next job? And 5-0 became like, many people say 5-0. So, well, 5-0 was a big area with animal actors and what eventually became Barney and things like that. So it was like, okay, now it's just not one attraction. Now it's potentially 3 attractions that you're going to be the lead for.
Yeah.
So you keep looking for what's the next step? What's the next learning opportunity? And you think about it as a lateral move, but you learn something new.
Right. And so another thing about your origin story was you started here, you went here, you went here, you kind of zigzagged. Take me, and so there's a lot of cross-function success there.
Yes.
And I like that. Take me back, and you and I talked a little bit about this when you approached me, and I approached you, and we talked about HR, and we made it happen. Talk about that.
I think because obviously we known about each other because I was in 5-0. You were the area supervisor. And you and I had many conversations about, I don't remember if you remember, but I used to carry a binder, and that binder had like drawings and ideas of things that I could suggest. If you go back today to ET and you see those numbers on the floor, that was my idea actually. You tell, okay, bike number, seat number 2 and 3, whatever. So, but I used to write all that stuff down and draw it.
I remember now, yeah.
And so. At this time, we're in Back to the Future. I was a lead at Back to the Future. They had closed it for some time. They reopened. Then I got moved there. And you and I are having that conversation that many managers, many employees don't like to have, which is that annual performance review conversation.
Oh, right.
It's like a forced conversation because the company says that you must have it. Well, in 2 occasions in my career, that process has helped me move to the next stage. The first one was with you. And we're sitting down and you said, look, I know you're the trainer and you enjoy this. I know you're in UCF, but tell me more about what you're trying to accomplish. And I was on my last year, almost to start my last year. And I kind of walked you through what I wanted to do and human resources. And you said, oh my God, I used to be a a recruiter in HR. I know people. I know people in HR. And that conversation with you led to you helping make contact with the managers and the leaders of HR at that time at Universal. And you didn't do it for me, which I think it's important here. You didn't give me the job. You didn't tell them you need to hire him. You basically said, I'm going to connect you with the right people. And you did. And then it was up to me to obviously meet them and talk to them and give them my thoughts and my ideas and what I wanted to do. And technically what I was looking for was an opportunity to learn, what HR was all about, because I had only done that through school. And I would say I had a year left, and I was thinking, once I'm done with school, I have to go find a job. Why not find a job in this company? Why not take advantage of this big, important company here in Orlando that has a human resources department? And, they do great stuff. Why not to try to do that here? Mm-hmm. And that's to obviously what I said earlier about being an internal intern. Basically, that's what it was. And going back and forth between parks, between writing show and human resources. And I did that 3 times, like 3 seasons. And right after that, I finished school, I graduated, and within a month of my graduation, I was starting my first official, what you call professional job, which was, the trainer on-the-job trainer for food and beverage. So I was back to food and beverage at this point, which I had told in the beginning, I'm never going to do that again after I'm done here. So, but obviously that was the next step. That was the next evolution in my growth, I guess, right, of learning. Yes.